ahead of its time. African lion may not exist anymore, but halfway around the globe, discerning aficionados can buy Kenyan Arabica coffee produced on a single estate or by women. They can see pictures of individual farmers. Now that is called connecting. However, when I go to a lawyer's office in Lagos or an office in Cape Town, I'm being served Nespresso. I actually travel with Spring Valley or Java House or Dorman's Coffee or Safari Tea, and people's eyes light up when they actually taste it, but they can't buy it in country. What about more complex B2B goods, such as machinery and medical equipment that use technology in their design, production, and monitoring? Traditionally, Africa has imported many of these products from outside. But did you know that a frugal MRI scanner is being developed by a multidisciplinary intercontinental team, including Uganda? Imagine what the continent could produce and trade in, given all the technology we have, and now with the economies of scale of the AFCFTA. Trade, though, especially in a globalized world, is complex. As Kenya's Deputy Minister of Trade said yesterday, countries that are at war don't trade with each other, but that doesn't mean trust is automatic. So where does technology come in? In October, the G7 published a set of digital trade principles, and I'll touch on some of these as they relate to this morning's agenda. First, digital trading systems. Governments and industry must collectively drive forward the digitization of trade-related documentation. Imagine not just having PDFs on email, that's so 20th century, but digital documents that you know are authentic and original, and you know who has originated them. Trading counterparties, transacting banks, and all the other stakeholders in the supply chain will be able to validate the data they need securely, even if they're on different platforms. We'll explore some of these solutions in the first two panels. Note that this does mean changing the mindset of banks, ports, customs, freight forwarders, express logistics, and importers and exporters. Legislation in Africa will also need updating, and we'll be discussing the UN model law later. Where governments use digital for processing imports, exports, and goods in transit, these systems should facilitate the flow of goods along the entire supply chain. Single windows should streamline stakeholder interactions with border agencies, not make them more cumbersome. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to design these systems across all stakeholders. From an AFCFTA perspective, I think removing a lot of these, or in fact, enabling a lot of these technologies will actually remove a lot of barriers, non-tariff barriers, and I think will be far more impactful in the success of the AFCFTA. Third, next, we need data to be able to flow freely across borders with the trust of individuals and businesses. We need to take into account privacy, the protection of intellectual property rights and security, but we must go back to the problem we're trying to solve, which is allowing competitive products to reach customers in the shortest possible time and at the lowest cost through formal channels, not some sort of shadow organization. Open government data will be important, and by that it means public sector data, wherever possible, published in anonymized, open, interoperable, and accessible forms. But that means having the data in the first place, as Professor Bitanga Ndemo will no doubt remind us. After the first two panels, the International Chamber of Commerce will shed light on the Digital Standards Initiative and how that is contributing to making sure we don't end up with data and documents that can't talk to each other, and that we're making the most of technology so that trade is efficient and governance is strong. Then we will have 3 parallel breakouts on technology enabling intra-Africa trade. The acceleration of digital in trade since the start of the pandemic has allowed, indeed required, organizations to redesign supply chains, What has the impact been on the continent? The first breakout is about trade in food, from farm to fork. For example, how technology can reduce post-harvest loss and enable traceability, and make sure that I can be knowingly served Spring Valley coffee in the lawyer's office I was referring to. We will explore how we can make African produce and cuisines more predictable, accessible, safe, affordable, and exciting across the continent. Breakout 2 is about healthcare. We will discuss increasing the availability and affordability of genuine pharmaceuticals, vaccines, medical devices and diagnostics, and biotechnology, as well as health and wellness advisory, telemedicine, and other services across Africa through trade and technology. Africa needs to encourage high quality, trustworthy, affordable, data-driven healthcare models and export them to the rest of the continent. Of course, we will explore who has and who should have access to healthcare data and give examples of frugal innovation. The continent now has an Africa Medicines Agency, and I, for one, am very curious to hear how that is going to streamline processes and just enable acceleration and of access to medicine and other health products. Third, we'll look at outsourced services, such as recruitment and accounting, and even tourism. With a boom in remote working due to the pandemic, how can we rethink how organizations manage their people and finances through technology and cross-border trade? If you read Craig Atkinson's piece about the prospect of a digital AFCFTA, and I do recommend you read it, we'll send out the link afterwards, we should be able to integrate computer executable rules to automate cross-border transactions into national customs systems. These machine-readable versions of laws should be openly accessible. With the rules coded in this way, individuals without trade or legal training will more easily benefit from the FCFTA, and we all know what implications that will lead to. And that, we could integrate those rules not just into sort of customs systems, but all sorts of other systems, certificates of origin, and so on. At the end of the day, Africa does need to take its ambitions a few notches higher to democratize trade. And for that, we will have Professor Bitenge Ndemo making closing remarks at 1 o'clock. But first of all, let me introduce our keynote speaker. Ziyang Fang is the head of digital trade at the World Economic Forum, where he focuses on how the digital ecosystem, a word you'll hear often this morning, and technologies such as 3D printing, blockchain, artificial intelligence are changing international trade. He's an attorney and technologist and has worked in public and private sector, including Airbnb, the US government, Shearman Sterling, and the IMF. Ziyang has published and spoken extensively on technology and international trade, which is why I'm particularly delighted to have him here. He's even spoken to my own government, the UK Parliament. And he does run a course on tech policy at the University of California, Berkeley. And maybe through MOOCs and through digital, Ziyang, we can have that being broadcast onto the continent of Africa. Lastly, Ziyang is joining us from San Francisco, so I'm particularly grateful, and I am sending the finest AA coffee his way. Ziyang, the floor is yours.